Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorna Baker, and on behalf of the Johnston family, I would like to thank everyone for being here today and for all of the support shown to them today and leading up to today. We've gathered here to remember the life of Thomas Owen Johnston and remember what he meant to all of you. I met Tom a number of times, and he was such a kind and gentle man that once you met, wasn't easy to forget. In witnessing his family over these last couple of days, it's easy to see the special bonds he had with each of them. He's left behind by, in his own words, his beautiful wife, Sylvia, of 67 years. That's magical. His children, whom he adored, Glenn and his wife, Debbie, and Karen Hughes and her husband, Lindsay, and his grandchildren, Lacey and Kyle, Tia and Matthew, Kira, Kurt and Riley, and his cherished great-grandchildren, Evan, Aubrey, and Ellie, who were his biggest joys. What a legacy he has left. Today, Tom wanted his service to be a celebration of his life, and in following his wishes, two people are going to share their memories and stories. I would first like to ask Tom's firstborn grandchild, Lacey Raymond, to come up and share with us stories of her papa.
Hi, everybody. There are easier things to do. If I don't already know you, glad to meet you, happy to know you. I gotta make my way through this because he has a great story. My grandfather was born to Minnie Bell in Alton, Johnston in 1931, right near where he ended up living for the majority of his life. He was the middle child of three boys. Murray, otherwise known as Uncle Mo, was the oldest, and Norm was the youngest. He had a simple upbringing on a farm with his parents, where he learned to work hard and be so expressive about his love for others. The smell of bread baking wafted from their house, and chickens skittered through their yard. Eventually, he used these chickens to make money. He delivered the eggs to Windsor with Murray in his father's Plymouth. He once told me that one day when Murray was driving into Windsor, Murray hit the brake too hard and a carton of eggs toppled over and broke all over the car. But being the man that he was, he did not dwell on the loss of income for that day, but gained the understanding that you should not put all of your eggs in one basket. Tom went to school until grade 10 and then began working for Dean Construction. He went to Toronto and got his heavy machinery licenses, which made him appealing when he met my beautiful grandmother, Sylvia, at age 15 at a baseball game in Essex, seeing that he could drive. They started dating, and soon after, the two were so smitten with each other, they had their photo taken by a professional photographer named Graham. And the photo was in the series of photos up there. Being so stunning, the photo was placed in the window of Moore and Coots, much to the dismay of my great-grandmother. My grandmother, Sylvia, at age 18, after finishing high school, started training to be a nurse. One night, while she and my grandfather were dating, they fell asleep in my great-grandfather's car because, you know, those old vehicles were just so comfy to sleep in. And my grandma was so nervous that she was going to get kicked out of her training because she was late the next day, but it was actually my grandfather who was reprimanded by having his car privileges revoked for the month. A few years later, when my grandfather was 19, he asked my great-grandpa Atten if he could marry Sylvia, to which he replied no. He said he was too young, but being the man that Tom was, a year later, he just went ahead and married her anyways. He never formally asked her, he just said something along the lines of, "I think it is time that you married me." So they were married on December 29th, 1951, which meant he was able to write her off of his income tax for the entire year. This made my great-grandpa Atten realize he was a reasonable man and therefore gave him his blessing. As I said, at the time that they were married, he worked for Dean Construction, for a man by the name of Americo Dean as a crane operator. After 6 months of marriage, while working for Americo on a barge, tragedy struck. My grandmother, who made it past the event in the Plymouth and was now a nurse, was called down from the floor she was working on at Grace Hospital to the emergency room. An explosion had blown him off the barge. She was handed his hat full of hair, and she stared at his charred body. The doctors jumped into action, and he was wrapped like a mummy. The doctors scraped him every day for over a month, peeling back the layers of cloth and then reapplying them. He once told me that the stench of himself was almost unbearable. My grandma, however, was there by his side and was always his best caregiver. Another person that was by his side in the hospital every so often, though, was Americo Dean. Americo would come into the room, and being the Italian that he was, he referred to him as Tommy, sweetheart, and then he would proceed to talk to him about the business that my grandfather had grown to love. He would then take my mummified grandfather, light a cigarette for him, and let him smoke through the small crack in the bandages. My grandmother, on the other hand, made sure that the mummification continued until he was finally released, looking as good as any farmer named Thomas Owen Johnston does. The only wrinkles that were left on him were the ones he gained from smoking Americo cigarettes. Although he loved Americo, he eventually stopped working for Dean Construction when he was asked to travel because he did not want to leave his growing family. At this point, he and my grandmother had had my Uncle Glenn. It was 1955, and they were living in a garage beside my great-grandpa and Grandma Johnston's with no indoor washroom. It was freezing. Gran would wash the floors, and the floors would freeze as she was washing them. Eventually, when my mom was born 3.5 years later, they built a house on the Naylor Side Road. Tom was a crop farmer by this point and spent his days farming and drilling wells with his brother Murray. When my uncle and mother were young, my grandparents both worked hard. In fact, they worked hard for their entire lives. My grandfather was proud that my grandmother was an amazing nurse, working shift work, all the while maintaining an immaculate house. He too was proud, working as a successful crop farmer. Days were long, but he never seemed to have a bad one. When he would come in from the fields, matted with dust, and say hello, excitement filled his voice. He loved his family so much. On their downtime, they spent their days together. Early in life, he would laugh while watching my mom and uncle attempt to ride their pigs, which is actually impossible, my mom has told me. My grandfather would wake them faithfully for church every Sunday to attend Essex Baptist. My uncle, who always has been adventurous, eventually talked them into tenting in a lower gorge. Well, a thunderstorm struck, and the tent filled with water. So they proceeded to get a little 15-foot white trailer and started camping at Balsam Lake. My grandfather was very involved in the lives of his children. He sat on the school board while my mom and uncle attended Maidstone Central, and sat on the board for the Essex Minor Hockey Association while my uncle played hockey. My grandfather eventually moved the house when my mom was 12 and my uncle was 15. The four of them lived in the trailer while they built the basement of their farmhouse, and then they eventually put the house that they had built on the Naylor onto the basement and moved in. At this point, I believe he was working for Case Power Equipment. This job eventually led to the next, and one that he certainly loved. He became road superintendent of Maidstone in, I think, 1976, maybe 77, I'm not exactly sure. My grandfather was a man of faith, and this was the year he got christened. His first year on the job was the worst flooding and snow accumulation that anyone had seen since the turn of the century. People were boating down streets during the summer and being pulled from ditches in the winter. My grandpa told me that he had to pull a drowned cow out of the Pike Creek that year. He told me that this was actually one of the more difficult things that he had done in his life. I thought that perhaps being mummified for a month was hard, but apparently this was a tough feat. In 1980, my parents wed. He gave his blessing even after he had to rescue my dad from a snowbank on his 18th birthday on County Road 46. That year, my newly married mom called her father at 2 a.m. Flooding had struck again. She had left work to water up to her thighs, arrived home to what would eventually be the house I was born in, and realized she was in knee-deep. So she called my grandpa, who then drives from Essex to my mom and dad's house on Lozon Road in Windsor. He pulls up in a truck and sends a wave splashing against the front bay window. My mom is frantic. My dad is on his way home from his night shift. My grandfather pulls in and laughs. He tells her it is only water, and then proceeds to say, "You need a ditch," and he gets to digging. Within minutes, the water is running into the ditch and out of the house. A similar story happened with my uncle. His furnace broke and he was heating his house with a fire. His wood supply was dwindling, but then in drives my grandfather at 3 a.m. with a truck full of wood. You see, he could fix any conundrum and often did so in the wee hours of the morning. 2 years later, I was born, and 2 years after that, my uncle married my Aunt Debbie. My grandpa had spread his crop even further. My sister came next, and then my two cousins, Kyra and Kurt, came soon after. My grandparents loved these days, watching their family grow while still allowing themselves to venture out with friends and on camping trips. They had traded their 15-foot trailer for a fifth wheel and enjoyed fishing and ATVing regularly. My grandpa hunted each year. Actually, he did so until he was 84, and this is something that he thoroughly enjoyed. My uncle and him shared similar interests. My grandpa cherished some special trips they took together, including venturing to Alaska to see the polar bears. His crop continued to be productive as I married my husband Kyle, and we had two children, Evan and Aubrey. My sister also married her husband Matt, and they had their daughter Ellie. He now had 3 great-grandchildren. While still living on the farm, he is now he was able to show my children some of the things that he had shown me. This is where things get personal. Growing up, I spent most Saturdays with my grandparents. As I mentioned before, my grandfather, who I so affectionately referred to as Papa, and then eventually after I had kids, G-Pop, did not have much formal education. He did, however, manage to be one of the most influential teachers in my life. He taught me about soybeans as we rode the big John Deere tractor through the fields, about water levels as we made wooden boats propelled by elastics to float in the creek, and about trees as we wrote letters to each other on birch bark that we pulled from the tree out back. But the most important thing that I understand now as an adult is that through all of the time he spent with me, during which he gave me his most undivided attention, he was actually teaching me how to be a good person. One of my favorite quotes is, "You are the greatest project you'll ever work on." But when you think about it, in order to know what you have to work on or how to improve yourself, you need role models. I will forever strive to be as good as Papa. He was a man who loved deeply. He showed me what a loving marriage is, how expressing your love to your family knits people together. He taught me how being an optimist makes people want to work, smile, and try harder. He taught me about quality goods but never cared about status symbols. He was not scared to be vocal about the things he disagreed with. He taught me that even when something terrible happens, like you get severely burned while working on a barge, you keep your faith, press forward, and use chapstick. Do you know that when my mom asked him what favorite things he wanted to bring to hospice, he said, "Sylvia and my chapstick." I will miss the soft feel when he hugged me tightly in his flannel shirt, the genuine excitement in his voice when he would say hello to me, and how he teared up each time he saw his great-grandchildren. I'm not naive enough to think that he was perfect. No one is. But to me, he was pretty darn close. My fondest memories of Papa are traveling on the four-wheeler back the lane with a lunch packed in a tin lunch pail. We would stop and sit on the distinct trunk of our favorite tree in the conservation area behind his farm and discuss how Granny made the best tuna sandwiches known to man. Since then, things have changed. The four-wheeler has been sold, the tree was recently burned, and Papa has now passed. Change can be hard to handle, but the optimist in me can see that he has left the best of his spirit with us and can now walk the lane again in heaven. He will be forever loved, and that is something I'm certain of. I would like to end by having everyone give a thumbs up for Thomas Owen Johnston, who lived long, laughed often, and loved much.
Thank you, Lacey. It's not easy to get up and share memories of someone that's so special to you, and you did wonderful. Second to share today is Tom and Sylvia's very dear friend, Cindy Wallstead. I was told that the bond between Cindy and Tom and Sylvia has grown very strong over the last few years. Cindy helped with Tom's journey and sat many times with Sylvia and Tom, leading them in prayer and providing comfort and support. Cindy, if you would like to come forward and share.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sylvia, Karen, and Glenn, for giving me this honor to say a few words about your lucky Tom. We don't always take the time to recognize or acknowledge the lasting impressions different people make on us as we travel through life. Tom Johnston was one such person for me. He was one of the sweetest men I have ever known, and I have the chance to tell him so. I first met Tom through my husband's parents. Over the years, I had the opportunity to become better acquainted with Tom and Sylvia on several occasions. More recently, since my retirement from teaching, I was able to develop a closer relationship with both Tom and Sylvia. When I would visit them from time to time, Tom always welcomed me with open arms and gave me the feeling that he had known me all my life. His caring, friendly, and loving nature beamed through the warmth of his smile. I came to know Tom as the special man of genuine kindness and love who always showed interest in and concern for others. In the past couple of weeks, Tom and I really connected spiritually as friends. As we talked together, it was obvious Tom believed that knowing and developing a relationship with the Lord was important. Living in faith and modeling good Christian values to his family made him proud. He lived and walked Psalm 13, verse 5 and 6. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. Tom brought this scripture reference to life in one of my last visits with him. I felt so enlightened. Here was a man on a stormy journey with cancer whose heart was overflowing with love. With great excitement and emotion, he talked about going to heaven, seeing Jesus, his Lord and Savior, as well as all the loved ones gone before him. I couldn't help but think how the room was filled with the love of Jesus and the amazing grace of God. Tom repeatedly kissed the back of Sylvia's hand and endearingly expressed how much he loved her and how beautiful she was. The conversation flowed so naturally that he freely expressed his love for Jesus, raising his arm high into the air and saying, "I love you, Jesus." Tom also felt comfort and confidence in reassuring us we would all be together again. If Tom could share aloud his loving and heartfelt thoughts with his family right now, I am sure they would reflect the lyrics of this song, "Until We're Together Again" by Catherine J. Cochran. Some believe a star shining brightly in the heavens represents the love of someone they cannot see. Others feel the butterfly dancing in the garden is a symbol of a spirit flying free. But when a gentle breeze caresses your hair, or you see a bird soaring in the air, should you smile and remember me in prayer? Oh, I will be there. There's no need to say goodbye. One day we will be together. Remember me and smile. I am in your heart forever. I will feel the love you send until we're together again. Close your eyes. You will find me sailing in the sunset, riding waves of bluest oceans ever seen, holding hands of all the others here before me, my head upheld to hear the angels sing. I can do all the things I've always dreamed of. I will be watching over you from above. Don't worry about me, because I brought along all your love. It doesn't matter where you are, my love will shine upon you from that star. Like a butterfly, now I'm free, ascending through the sky, peacefully. There's no need to say goodbye. One day we will be together. Remember me and smile. I am in your heart forever. I will feel the love you send until we're together again. In closing, embrace those special people in your life who truly make a lasting impression on you, as Tom did for me. We become better people for knowing them. Thank you, dear friend. Yes, Tom made a deep and lasting impression on my heart. He was an inspiration to me. I will always think of him with loving fondness and remember him as the sweet man who enriched and blessed my life. I thank God that our paths in life crossed. We can feel great joy and comfort in knowing that Tom is in the loving arms of Jesus, that his journey is now complete and victorious, and in God's timely manner, we will see him again. God bless you, Tom.
Thank you, Cindy. I think this is exactly what Tom would have wanted his service to be. And as we conclude this service, the family does want me to invite everyone to stay with them for a meal. I'm sure Tom liked to gather everyone around for a meal, right? And that's what the family would like you to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a final goodbye out to Tom, if everyone can follow the family as we exit out of the funeral home. And then we will watch him make his final leave, and then everyone is invited to come in and have time of fellowship and just be together as we share a warm meal. Yes. So if I could have the pallbearers please exit out into the hallway, and then if everyone can just remain in their seats for a moment, and we'll have pallbearers have some instruction, and then we'll